Tired of being a cripple. My name is Willard Mason. I'm an alcoholic. And I've been sober every day since September 13, 1965. I've already had mine. I got mine. Sitting in this circle up here before you guys got here. But see, this that made my weekend, 5 minutes with these guys. And seeing these people I love better than I love me, and I can't get used to it. I can't get used to it. I can't believe people think that much of me. I just can't do it. And I'm so grateful, I'll be forever grateful. But that's what AA has wrought in my life. And I know last year I pretty well just talked about people that had meant a lot to me in AA and how they helped me. And I'm a product of these, and I still am. And Al said, we found everything in here that we couldn't find mostly in our own families. I found a father in here I never had. And he was 4 or 5 different people, And we talked about Big Book John, this old man. Exterior pretty rough, but the interior softest guy you ever made. Was in a cabin one night of a men's retreat, and this is a gruff old man, Marine, construction worker, been in prison a couple times I think, and he was a pretty tough old man. And I'm sleeping on the couch, and there's 6 or 8 of us in this room, and I'm laying there, and this old man gets up to go to the restroom, comes back by, stops by my bed, on the couch, leans over and kisses me on the forehead. I thought I was going to cry. I had to look away to keep from crying. I think, how can you love somebody that much? What did I do to deserve this? And what I did was I came to this program and to the simple expedient, not taking a drink, one day at a time, tried to practice these principles. Very imperfectly, And thank God I got here when AA was simple. These were simpler times. AA was not complicated in 1965. Just come in and don't drink. What we're going to do is not drink, And thanks, Steve. Before I get, I want to mention, I want to appreciate Steve that he's helped me a lot. Sometimes when I didn't even want to be helped, And there's a lot of people around me like that. I get help I didn't know I wanted. But that's kind of what you got to do for me. But I came in and I guess I kind of go back a little bit. I always like to say I've had a pretty good childhood. I had kind of a normal childhood as I remember. That my mom stayed home and my dad worked, and the big deal in our house was when Bob Wills put out a new record. And we didn't have TV, we had a record player, and my dad always bought the Bob Wills record, and he'd come home and play San Antonio Rose or whatever it was. And I remember one was called Watching the Bubbles in My Beer. That's a wonderful, wonderful old country ballad, if you hadn't heard that. But that lasted till I was 6. And when I was 6 years old, they took me down to the edge of the elementary school, sent me into the 1st grade, and I didn't have a clue what that was about. And my life was pretty well screwed up after that, I read the other day on an old program somewhere I'd heard. I was thumbing through some old programs I had over the years, and this guy said, I was a live birth, and then it went downhill after that. And I thought, man, that's pretty indicative of what happened to most of us. I was born pretty good, and then after that it kind of got bad. Well, I hung on for about 6 years. It's pretty good. And I was pretty confused. And that's what I used to be like. I didn't fit in. I didn't fit in when I was in the 1st grade. I didn't fit in any of those places. I didn't know what was going on. And when I came into AA, 24 years old, I was just the same thing. I didn't know what was going on, where I was going, what to do. I had no idea how to do this. I didn't know how to do this, And You want to know now that all these people we deal with at AA are just some of God's kids trying to figure out how to live, trying how to do life. Some of them do pretty good, some of them don't do very good, you know. But that was me. That's what I was like. Now, I think that's different. I think we've drifted off a little bit in AA. We talk too much about what happens when we got drunk. See, and what I'm like and what happened when I got drunk, two different stories. You know, what happened when I drank alcohol is what happens to anybody who drinks alcohol. You take an old deacon out of the Baptist church and drink as much of that stuff as I did, he's going to get drunk and foul mouth and slap his wife too, you know. And, but what do we really like on the inside, you know? Old C.S. Cargill always said, you know, you look real good on the outside, but how are you really on the inside? That's what this is about. And what happened, I think, when it says in that book that these people told us what we used to be like, you know, what I was like was lost and inferior and scared. Mostly I was scared. Mostly I was scared of everything, you know, and I didn't know what to do about that. And so I just lived my life till I was 24 years old like that. And that's pretty much the drunk log right there, you know. First time I drank, I got drunk. And the second time I drank, I got drunk and blacked out. I was a blackout drinker. And the last time I drank, I got drunk and blacked out. In between, and when I read this book, it said, "We're always more or less insanely drunk." And when I read that, I knew these people had me. They understood what this is about. That's the importance of this book in my life. I saw myself in this book. And I was literate, you know. I got out of high school, barely, with a social pass. Used to give social passes, what they call a social pass. Like, you've been here long enough, you don't get to come back. you have graduated, son. And that's kind of what I got. And you know, so that's kind of how I started. And I read this book and I understood this book. That's why we don't need to change a book, you know, because the book you can read if you're pretty much illiterate. I think you can kind of thumb through the pages of this book and feel better. You know, I'll always tell you about, you know, we was over at some of you guys from over Houston been out to the, what's the name of that old place? Wheelhouse. Over to Wheelhouse. You know, you go to Wheelhouse, they gave you a big book. Well, they used to, I don't know what they do now, but they give you a big book. You had to carry that big book with you wherever you went. When you took a shower, you could lay it down. But if you wasn't in the shower, you better have your big book. And when you sat down, you had to open it. You don't care where you opened it to, you just got to open it. Smoke a cigarette, tell lies, whatever, but you got to open that book. Maybe you can get this through osmosis, I don't know, you know, but you could do worse. Get a book, carry a book around. You know, I think that's what we need to do with books. I think we need to get books in people's hands, you know. Over the years, I've come to believe we need to be giving these books to people. For about 40 years, I thought you ought to buy your own book, you know. You want a book? Buy yourself a book. You want whiskey? You bought whiskey? Buy yourself a book. And that's how I got my book. That's how I got this book, this very book. You know, Harold asked if I had my first book. This is an old book here, a different color on it, different cover. I wore a couple of them off. But that old man, when I called AA, said, "You need to get a book." I said, "Well, how much is a book?" He said, $4.50. I said, "Oh, dear, I don't have that kind of money." I didn't mean I need to go get that. I just didn't have it anywhere I know I could get it. I couldn't have went and got it within the next week. So they let me pay it out. I paid it off. And about that first month, I got that worked out pretty good. And that's the kind of shape I was in when I came in. And but you know, to kind of jump around here, I drink like that. And you know, I don't know why I came to AA. I never heard about AA. Somebody said they didn't know about AA before they came here, and I didn't. And I guess I saw Days of Wine and Roses and knew something about it, but that didn't mean nothing to me. A couple of guys in my group tried to quit drinking after they saw that movie. They didn't do it very long, but they tried. So, because you know, we always tried to quit drinking, but I didn't know how to stop drinking. But then later on, towards the end of my drinking, I tried to quit drinking forever, and found out I couldn't. That was kind of a shock. You know, that's when I started to do. I had trouble. I thought I'll just quit drinking, and I couldn't. And then I thought I quit for a month, and I couldn't quit for a month. And I tried to quit for a week. Never did make a week. I never made a week. And later on, I found out the problem with that was that I was trying to stop drinking while I was drinking. And it's hard to it's hard to quit drinking if you're still drinking. I don't know. And some of us, that's why I put on my little card I hand out to some of these guys that says, if you want to stop drinking, you're going to have to stop drinking. And that's about it. That's not even the first step in AA. That's kind of a prerequisite to AA. AA doesn't say you got to stop drinking. AA kind of presumes when you show up, you've been sober. It may not be but for 30 minutes, but you got 30 minutes. And how are you going to not drink anymore is what this is about. But see, I think my experiences when I came in and when I saw these people I saw that took me when I came here, I knew they had something. I knew something about AA. Mike from Maryland was here last year, and he was the one that I kind of got the impetus from. I heard him say something that struck a chord in me, and I don't know what it was, about having some kind of a spiritual experience or awakening or a change in his life. And when I went to that payphone booth that night and called Alcoholics Anonymous, that happened to me. I drove one night and I had as the story says, a professor in the paradox, I pitched a Lulu. I pitched a real bitch out here. And I was having some trouble sleeping after that. And I knew I needed to do something. So I go to a payphone and I call these numbers. And I've told this 1,000 times, but they had, back in Odessa, they had 3 places for AA. They had a suburban group, Basin group. Somebody's here from the Basin group. That's where I made my first meeting. And they had a cottage group with a little old house over here. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, I called these numbers. And nobody answered the first one. It was about 2 o'clock, 2:30. And called the second one. Nobody answered at the Basin. And I called this number at the cottage group, and nobody answered. But my future hung on this old man putting his phone number under it. He said, if no answer, call. If no answer, call this number. And I called this old man at 2:30 in the morning. And he answered the phone. And he talked to me. And maybe 30, I don't know how long. I just made up 30 minutes. He probably talked 30 minutes. And but from that, I knew that he knew. I knew something about that man. That man knew something about me. And I don't know what that is. I can't explain that. That's a grace of God. That's a Spirit of God working through that man. Something happened when you can talk to one person like that. When you're doing what I was doing, how I was living, and you can get on the payphone and talk to one guy and never take another drink the rest of your life. I don't know, what is that? What is that? But a miracle of healing says that in it. What is that? I don't understand that. But that's what happened to me. And when I left that phone booth, my life was never the same. My life was never the same. I started on a trajectory of my life through Alcoholics Anonymous that's beyond my wildest dreams. Like I said before, I don't even believe it someday. I don't know who they're talking about. They're talking about me. Who is that? Hey, that can't be me. That couldn't happen to me. But that's what I got. Now, it wasn't all sudden like that, and I don't know if that was a spiritual experience, but it was a change in my life. And he said, if you still feel the same way tomorrow as you do tonight, you call me. And I waited all day long to call him, and I finally called him because I was afraid he was going to go home from work. I knew I had his work phone number, and I called this old man. He took me down to an AA group, took me down to cottage group. And I saw these steps on the wall, and I didn't see anything that I didn't understand them, but they seemed okay. Traditions, I don't know what that's about. Didn't notice them too much. But he told me on the phone, he said that night, in the book it says we don't like to pronounce any individual as alcoholics. I think we took that a little too far sometime, because that old man looked at me and he said, I'll tell you what's the matter with you, kid. You're alcoholic. and later on, I realized he hadn't read the book near enough to tell me that, because I was sensitive and newcomers, I don't think in 1965 the word newcomers ever came up. They just didn't think much about newcomers. If you want, they adhered to the principle in this book, if you want what we have, well, what do you got? Well, we got a meeting at 8:30. Monday and Thursday. And he said, you be there. I said, how do I know when I go to meetings? How often do I have to go? He said, you got to go Monday and Thursday, you be there. And so that's how I knew when to go to meetings. And my decision about going to meetings was made. I didn't have to think about on Monday what I'm going to do. I already know what I'm going to do Monday. I'm going to meeting because he said, you be down there. And I went early. I was the first one there. I picked up that habit somewhere. Thankfully, because these guys now got it. I don't think they caught it from me, but they got it. They don't go anywhere on time. On time's late. Guys we won with. We took a trip the other day. We was going to leave at 9. Well, they're circling my block out there about 8:15. You know, they don't want to come to my house too early and pick me up. And so about 8:30, we're all out in the yard waiting to go. At about 9 o'clock, the guy that's driving showed up. And we said, where the hell you been? You said 9 o'clock. Well, it don't mean 9 o'clock. We send him text messages. Ken's supposed to come pick us up. He thought 9 o'clock meant 9 o'clock. He goes, no, that ain't how this thing works. You know, so yeah. On the way up here, Steve said he's not going to come that early anymore. He's going to hold off till he's going to leave at 9. He wasn't going to do 8. He's going to do 8:45. 8:30. He's out circling the block again out there. Then it was supposed to meet KC. KC thought he was going to leave at 9. He came by at 9. We was all in the car. A couple of guys had to get out and go pee while I was waiting on him. You know, 9 o'clock. Come by my house at 9 o'clock. I didn't know how we do this stuff. You know. And we stand out in my yard. We hold hands. We say a third step prayer. I don't know what the neighbors think about that. I don't care what the neighbors think about that. I hope they think I'm a good man that prays with a bunch of good men out in my yard. I think that's it. So if you come to my house, you get to pray out in the front yard if you want to. When you do it in the car, I don't care. That's not my deal, you know. But I started my journey like that. You know, that's what I got from one time I called Tom and asked him how you go. I said, how do you go to these conferences and talk and speak and be a speaker and, you know, kind of have accolades heaped on you and kind of keep your ego, keep your equilibrium. And he told me, he said, number one, when you go to one of these things, you're not a speaker. What you are is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous that's been invited to show up and tell about your journey in recovery. The journey in recovery is what's important, see. And so my journey started when I went down to that meeting that first night. I went early. I was about an hour early. I'd go early and go early. And in the meetings, there was about 20 of us met in this little meeting, and he told me I got to get a book. He told me I need to get a home group. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the home groups. You know, we had a home group. We met Monday and Thursday. And I think that's what I miss in AA. I got a group I call a home group. We meet once a week. And that's about all I see, most of those guys, once a week. It's not really like a home group. Like we used to have a home group. Matter of fact, we rented this house, and it was like a home. You went in, and it's the same bunch every week, Monday and Thursday. And sometimes we go out and eat together. We cleaned up and mowed the yard together, whatever we had to do at that place. And we were a part of it. I think now we got too many meetings. People go to meetings and go home. And when you meet one day a week, I understand how that works. You know, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to a lot of stuff. But I think we miss the home groups. Something. I think stronger home groups is where any problem we're going to have is going to come from. In my group, we talked about, we knew some of these clubs, these groups had kind of cliques. You know, they got kind of different little factions in them. And this old woman that Scotty was an old man, my sponsor, and Dodie, his wife's named Dodie, foul-mouthed old woman. Dodie said, we got one clique over here. You walk in that front door, you're in the clique. You're in, you know. And if you walked in the door of the cottage group, and nobody knew you, Dodie would be over there to get you. And you would meet everybody in the room. You had to shake everybody's hand. in the room. And so that's kind of a habit. I try to shake everybody's hand in the room, but you can't do it sometimes in great big old meetings, but you need to try to make these people feel welcome, and that's what they made me feel welcome, like I was a part of this thing. But that was my journey in there. I started going to these meetings, and one of the things that my sponsor got me introduced to also was going to conferences, going to conventions, going somewhere, going places. Pardon me. I don't think people get in the car enough anymore. That's why we talk about windshield time and that stuff. Well, you don't get it. We just got in the car. We went a lot of places, You say, I'm going to be by and get you. We're going to Hobbs or somewhere, New Mexico. If you've never been to Hobbs, wonderful place over there. They say one time they had a beauty contest over in Hobbs. Nobody won. That's about it. That's old West Texas oil field. That's how we was, and it was them the guys we drink with, and that's where we hung out around there. But we go to these places. And when I was here, I got sold in September. About October, the old man was gone for a weekend. And he come back telling me this place he'd been to where they had a lot of AA speakers, about 500 AA people gathered up for a weekend. And he had been up to Amarillo to the top of Texas Roundup. And I didn't know much about that. But then one night I called him about 10 o'clock at night. I was about 3 or 4 months later. And I guess he thought if I called that time of night, something may be wrong, because he was already in bed. And he said, "How you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm doing okay." And he said, "Well, why don't you come over?" I said, "I'll do that." And so I went over and we started talking. And he got out an old reel tape. And he said, "Why don't we listen to this tape a little bit while our coffee makes?" And he put Wino Joe on there from Tyler. All you Tyler guys know Joe. And first AA talk I ever heard was on the tape was Joe. And man, I thought that's the greatest stuff I ever had. Now I'm into tapes, collecting that. But we started going to these conventions. And it come time to go to the top of Texas Roundup next year. He said, "You need to go up there with us." And I said, "I don't think I can afford to go this year." And he said, "I don't think you can afford not to go." And I said, "Well, I don't have any money." He said, "Well, go borrow some money." So I went to the bank and put in an application for a loan for $100. In 1965, that was a pretty good obligation. And they didn't give it to me that day. They had to wait for the committee to meet and check that out before they trusted me with that kind of money. And so they loaned me $100. And I go to this conference, and I had a 1962 Ford Falcon, and gasoline was $22.9. You couldn't put $3 worth. It wouldn't hold $3 worth of gas. A couple of dollars, and it'd be spilled out on the ground. And we go to the top of Texas Roundup, and the registration fee was $10. That included the banquet. You got a banquet with that. And the motel rooms and the hotel rooms in the Herring Hotel. If y'all been to Amarillo, old Herring Hotel's abandoned up there now. It's $12. So I spent about $45 for the whole weekend, Great. And I remember a lot of stuff happened that weekend that I don't remember what I did last week, but I can tell you, so I could tell you some jokes where Gary wouldn't want me to, but but I'll remember some of these stuff these old men said, and I was taken away with that. I love that stuff. I love being a part of that. I got up early, and I was the last one to go in. I stayed up late. I mean, if anybody's doing something, I stayed. It took me years to figure out why I'd go to these conferences and come home and just crash. And just Monday would be horrible, and I'd be depressed and mouth burnt out from cigarettes and coffee and that. And I found out you can go to bed sometimes when you go to one of them things. Just hell. And I remember about 1965, I lived in Arizona, we went to a state convention about 10 o'clock. About 10 o'clock, I went to bed. Got up the next day and thought, man, how long have they been doing this, And I felt pretty good after that. But that's how I kind of went in it. Of course, I overdid it too much, And I overdid it going to meetings. I'd go to meetings. I'd be the first one there, last one to leave. If somebody would stay, I'd stay. And until one day my wife said to me, she said, said, I never did see you when you were drunk, and I never do see you when you're sober. And I had to kind of think about that a little bit. What do they get out of this? What are the family supposed to get out of this? I had some obligations, so it kind of helped me to remember to keep this in balance. And I've been most blessed. One of the, that's a big part of why I'm sober. My wife, my family is a big part of why I'm sober. I don't know. There's a Bob Baker. Some of you knew Bob Baker. He got sober a long time over around Katy. He said most important things in his life. He was getting married to this lady for his second marriage. He said, what's important in my life? First is God. Second is AA, and third to be you. I don't know if he should have told her that like that or not, but I think there's something to that. See, but I don't know on any given day if you couldn't reverse any of those and say, because I understand God, I got a family. And my wife encourages me and allows me to go to AA. Not allow me, she don't say anything when I go. But, because I got a wife, I was able to keep myself together enough to find AA, and then I found God. So I don't know which order they come in, but to me, that's important. It's real important. And I'm most blessed. This was just my journey and my story, and I don't know why it come out like that. I've been married 63 years to the same woman. And I don't know how that works, And I told you guys before, I've said everything before. I said, I'm going to say it again next year, so I'm going to quit saying that. That's why I love these new people under a year. They hadn't heard this crap. So, the rest of you just kind of look at your lap. But, this, I forgot what I was going to talk about now. But, I was on this, I did this interview show on the internet. On Zoom, they were interviewing old-timers. And this lady said, if you could go back to 1965 and see Willard and tell him what's going to happen later on in the future, what would you tell him about AA in the future and about your life in the future? And I said, you couldn't tell him. He wouldn't. It's not feasible. It wouldn't even make any sense. My wife was right after she was kind of stuck when I was drunk. She didn't have a matter of fact. One of the reasons that motivated me to quit drinking, my wife she didn't even have a Social Security number when we got married. She never had a job, and she had a baby. She stuck at home. She stuck with me, and going back to her family was worse than what we had. So she didn't have anywhere to go. That's the reason she stayed with me. She didn't have anywhere to go. That's pretty noble objective. I appreciate it. I'm glad now. But she signed up for a secretarial course, like a 9-month secretarial school. They used to have a little private secretarial school, get some skills and some office. And I'm pretty sure what's going to happen when she graduates. So I got about 9 months to get my deal together here. So, so I set about stop drinking, and I couldn't stop drinking, and I couldn't stop drinking, and finally, but that's where she was going to leave. And after I was sober about 6 months, I know one weekend her and her old sister was driving around looking for apartments for her to go live in. That's how good I recovered my first 6 months. Because early on AA, what I did, I just didn't drink. I heard a guy say behind the podium early on that he could do everything he ever used to do, except he just doesn't drink anymore. And I thought, that's pretty good stuff. So I stuck with my oil field ways and kept doing what I was doing, and it wasn't working out very good. I had to change. And so I tell this lady, go ahead and tell little Willard in 1965 he's going to be married to the same lady 63 years. He's going to say, get out of here. Get the hell out of here. That ain't going to happen. Ain't no way. No way. Tell him that. Tell him he's going to retire from Amarillo College, community college, tenured, associate professor after 30 years. Me, I've never been to college. I don't know what college was. We don't go to college in my family. That's going to happen to me, you know. And you're going to be sober 58 years. No, man, I don't know about next week. You know, somebody hit it on the head here in one of these talks this weekend. Said, you know, that if I talk to some newcomer, tell him I got 58 years, he nods his head. Anybody get 58 years? That's not bad. But he wants to talk to this guy who got 3 months. How'd you get 3 months? How do you get through Thanksgiving? What am I going to do about Christmas? That's what I want to know. How am I going to make it through this? That's right. In my first meeting at the Basin Group, that's what I heard. This old man stood up and my sponsor said he got sober in 1951, which is pretty good. And one kid said he'd been sober about 90 days. Now that's the guy I went and talked to after the meeting was over. I want to see how you do that. That's what I need to concern about. And but I started it, and it made me put Alcoholics Anonymous on the same level as when I was taking a drink. You know, and I'd say, sometimes I work in the oil field, I'm kind of dirty, oily when I come in. I mean, I'd go to the meeting. He said, did you ever go get drunk when you're dirty and oily? Oh, yeah, mostly. He said, well, you come to the meeting like that. You don't have to go clean up, come to this meeting. You come to the meeting, you know. And when I'd say, I don't have money to do that, or one time I told him I didn't come to the meeting because my uncle came over for supper and I couldn't leave. He said, your uncle ever keep you sober? And I said, no. He said, you get to the meeting. And it was necessary that if I missed a meeting, which I didn't very much, you had to call in. We still got these guys here call in. None of my guys miss a meeting. You don't just not show up at a meeting. I don't know what that's about. Nobody ever looks around our group and say, I wonder where Michael is. I wonder where Buddy is. We know where Buddy is. We know where Gerald is. You know, because if I don't show up, I better tell somebody. You know, here a while back, I thought I'd told somebody I wasn't going to go for some reason, and I got about four or five phone calls. You okay? You sick? Of course, now they think I'm probably dead over in my bed somewhere. But man, you got to be accountable. You got to be responsible. I'm responsible for this kind of stuff. You know, that's my obligation. If you stick around here and get sober, it gets more. You got more obligation now. You know, you guys got sober 20, 30, 40 years. You know I got a big obligation. You know, you don't really talk about it, but I do. I got to be seen. You know, as much as I can. You know, I didn't understand why these old men stopped coming to AA. Got sober 50 years or something. I didn't even know them. Well, sometimes they're sick. Sometimes they're old. They can't get to meetings. You know, and but thank God I got these people haul me around. Now. Another thing that's happening as I got older, I'm getting to be, I got the traits of every old man I ever didn't like. When I say, what the hell's that old man doing, you know? And I don't like how they drive. I don't like where they go. They just kind of irk me sometimes, but I try not to say nothing. And, I could tell them how to drive better. I could tell them how to take directions better, but I try not to say nothing. And they're good enough to come get me, and most of the time I do. But and I got to realize I wouldn't put up with a guy like me very long. You know, why don't you stay home? We're not going to do that kind of crap. But that foundation I got still kind of sticks with me, I think, and these people that was here before me, and I got in. I've always known about the three legacies of AA. About the traditions and the concepts, and because in my group, the delegate to the General Service Conference was in Midland. He came to our group a lot, and my sponsor explained to me what that was. He said every week this guy goes up to New York for a year, and they make decisions about AA and do stuff. So I kind of knew what delegate was, and I knew we had to support General Service Office because he said one day when you come to meeting next week, bring $3.65. And I said, how come? And he said, we're going to send that money to New York. And we send a penny a day for your sobriety. Would you give a penny a day for your sobriety? $3.65. So everybody in our group had to bring $3.65. We put it in a pot, sent it to General Service Office. That was our group contributions. I don't know what the group did with their money. We had a treasurer arrangement in the group. There's all kinds of arrangements where groups take care of their money. And my sponsor's wife, Dodie, this old foul-mouthed woman, she collected the money. And I guess they called it group conscience. They just sat down one night and said, Dodie, we want you to collect the money and pay the bills. And if you need any money, you tell us about it. And if you don't, we don't want to hear about it. And so that's how we did. And so Dodie took care of the money, and it never came up. I don't think we ever had a group conscience meeting. I don't know what group conscience meeting was. We just met. And see, I tell you what, we met, and we had a great deal of fun. AA was a great deal of fun. You know, I go to some meetings that are not much fun anymore. You know, what we had back then, they had fun. And you know, I heard tape the other day. They had Evelyn Cover on her tape, and she was just laughing and giggling. Had more, and that's the way they did all the time. Every time we got together, they had fun. We'd have these weekend deals, and you'd love to go to them because they're going to be good and they're going to be fun. You're going to see these people that you like. There's no conflict, no contention, you know. And it was just good, and that's kind of what I got used to. And but I learned about the delegate, and then matter of fact, I was a delegate 40 years ago. 40 panels back. KC's panel 74. I was panel 34. And I got elected. And then about down in the Southwest Texas area, I tell them about my service history, and they got a procedures manual. You know how you got that. I would never made it. Because I didn't get elected to GSR. My sponsor said, "You're going to be GSR for this group." And I said, "Okay, I'll do that." So that was the beginning of my service. And that's when I went to the first, I thought we were just going to gather up Sunday afternoon and talk about AA or something. But it would have been an area assembly is what it would have been. You didn't recognize it, but it was the area assembly. It was every DCMs we had showed up. And that's when Evelyn Coger's husband, Bob Coger, old grouchy, old curmudgeon, I said, "Where's everybody at? There's not very many representatives for the groups here." And he said, "Kids, you might as well get used to the fact that at AA, about 5% of the people are going to do all the work. Now let's have a meeting." And we just went on and never thought about it anymore, you know. And that's so we come up with the 5%ers. These guys I hang out with. I think it may be 3% now. It's getting lower. Percentage may be dropping. But we started there. And I was telling somebody maybe at the supper the other day how I got to be DCM. I lived in Arizona. And in the area, nobody could find a DCM. They know where the DCM, district committee member, didn't know where he was. And I found him, and I called him on the phone, and I said, "I know you hadn't seen you around." He said, "Well," he said, "I'm not active anymore." And he said, "I don't know how to get out of this. You know, I don't know how to get off the mailing list." And I said, "Well, how would you like not to be DCM anymore?" And he said, "I'd love that." And so I said, "I'll be DCM." So I was a DCM for my area for probably not a year. So you read that in that policy procedures manual, you're not even eligible, you know. And so then one day, I was going to the conference, and my sponsor said, "Why don't you see if you stand for alternate delegate?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'll stand. I don't need nobody going to vote for you. Get no vote. We was up in the Panhandle. All the delegates came from middle of Odessa and down the populated areas." And so I said, "I'll do that." And then we got down there, and he said, "Well, why don't we just nominate you for delegate from the floor?" And I said, "Oh, okay." And we had a lady that was running for delegate. Real interesting if you've been to areas where people run for delegates. I mean, she wanted to be delegate real bad. She's alternate delegate, and she was promoting, and she was going to be delegate. And we voted, and I won on about the second ballot. And she was shocked. The lady was shocked. I was shocked. She was really shocked. And that's how I got to be the delegate. And it changed that's a great experience I ever had, being delegate to general service. We went up there, and it was good. I mean, there's a lot of contention going on now about trustees and what's going on up there. Man, these were the greatest spiritual people I've ever been around. And Dr. Jack Norris, he came back as emeritus. And a guy named Gordon Patrick was the chairman. It was great Class A guys. These were wonderful people. And Milton Maxwell was a trustee. He wrote this big article about the Washingtonians. You read about the Washingtonian, Milton Maxwell. He was there. Jim Estelle came up. Jim Estelle, the finest man I know, finest man I ever met. He used to run the TDC, and he was a Class A trustee. He loved Alcoholics Anonymous, spiritual man. You could just look, I told one time I was somewhere and I was about 20 years sober, and I said, if I ever grow up, Jim, I hope I'll be just like you. Man, I'd love, he was just a great man. Yeah, I loved him. And, but he don't go, he went back for years, and he quit going back to the General Service Conference as emeritus. And I asked him, I think it was over in Smithfield, and I said, how come you stopped going back to the conferences? And he thought a minute, he said, we were in those meetings, he said those people were angry. They were truly angry at each other. They really hated each other. They were really contentious. And he said, I won't put up with it. Nothing spiritual about it. He said, I won't be around it. And he left. He didn't go back. And that's what's crept in a lot of places, and it's kind of turned into maybe a business. AA is not a business. AA is not a business. AA is a spiritual entity which has to do some business. And that's what ought to happen in New York. They ought to be a spiritual entity. They got to deal with printers. They got to deal with unions. They got to buy paper. They got to print and ship books. They got to do all that stuff. But you can do that in a spiritual manner. You got to do that. That's what we've got to get back to. And that's why we've got to start sending people up there like that. And it starts in your group, in your home group. See? You start with these 3 legacy groups, that people that know what's going on, and your GSR knows what's happening. And then when your GSRs get together, they will pick a DCM who knows what's going on. And from that DCM, he'll be elected, the delegate will go up there. Then we'll have somebody that will know about AA and about the history of AA and about where we came from. And that you can't change this stuff. I'm going to read you the thing here I found a long time ago. I put in the back of my book. And it was, I don't know if I'm still, it was kind of faded out. Yeah, it's getting rid. They're talking about changing the big book. You can't change classic writings. You can't change Huckleberry Finn. I'm sure if Mark Twain wrote that today, Jim would have a different nickname, but he didn't. You can wish. We used to always say you could wish one hand and whatever you want to do with the other hand and see which gets see which gets full fed. We can wish it didn't happen, but it happened. You may be offended that Dr. Bob never read the Bible for 4 years before they found the big book, but they did. They got together every morning and read the book of James. Now, you can try to change that and rewrite history. You can't rewrite that. It's done. That cake has been baked. It's over. Move on, And Bill wrote this stuff down here. He wouldn't say that today. He wouldn't say queers, crackpots, and fallen women. He wouldn't write that in there. I don't believe he would. But he did. I ain't making that up. That's in my book, But one of the teachers always kind of follow around some of this old philosopher named Mortimer Adler. Read some of his stuff, and he was kind of part of the Great Books program in Chicago and some of these other places. They have certain curriculums where all you do is read the great books, and you're from these classes. Not changed as they were in the original. You read Plato and Aristotle and Machiavelli and Tom Sawyer and Hemingway, and you see what you can draw from that. What was the lessons from these books back then? And when they were putting together all the great books, they were thinking about what's a characteristic of a great book. What is it that makes a great book? And it said it's widely read, not just bestsellers that are virtual, and it says not written by specialists. Bill wasn't a specialist; it's just regular people. It's written for beginners, so beginners can read them. They're really pretty elementary. This book's pretty elementary, and I don't know how we're going to put this into plain language. we're paying people probably up to now, what, Casey, a couple $100,000 that we spent so far paying translators to translate the big book into plain language. You can't translate English into English. I don't know. I ain't very smart. You can translate this book into Swahili. You can translate it into French. You can't translate English into English. You got to rewrite it. So they're going to take Bill's stuff. And I just can imagine the scenario when I have to quit. Whatever you want. These people up there are reading in this book, and they come to the part that says, it works. It really does. And they think, how are we going to rewrite that? That seems pretty simple. But, they'll rewrite it, and we'll give them some money, and they'll laugh up their sleeve at us. They're paying us to rewrite that. It already said in here, when you talk to a prospect, you better talk to him in plain language so he can understand it. Keep it simple so he can understand it. And we're simple. We understand that simple stuff. And everywhere I go, I say, we kind of feed our egos to say this is a simple program for complicated people. Y'all hear that? Well, this is a simple program for simple people. And if you don't think they're simple people, just look sitting next to you. Hang around here all weekend. It's about the simplest damn guys I've ever seen. This book is always contemporary. It's not dated, or it doesn't age. First 164 pages, still the same, never ages. They get better, they get different. How can you... I told my group the last time we started reading the big book here, I've been sitting there like 58 years reading this book again. It's different. It's exciting. I kind of looked at it. I don't know any other books I want to read for 58 years. I got a couple of books I reread every 4 or 5 years, but this thing, we read this a couple times a year, and it's new and different. And I'll underline stuff in this book I got now. Man, I've never seen that before. All of us have that. This book changes as you change. I believe if you're illiterate, you can pick 3 or 4 words out of here and find it and then get by. And then as you learn more, you read more, it gets different. You don't have to understand all the words in this book. Just read what you can, skip over the rest of them, go on. I read a lot of stuff I don't understand. I like to read physics and science and mathematics. And I know very little about any of that, but I love to read about mathematicians and Euler's theorem and all kinds of weird stuff and have no idea what I was talking about. But I like to read it. You read Stephen Hawking? Any of you read Stephen Hawking's book? I ain't got a clue what that's about. But I read it. And the words I didn't know, I skipped over it. Up and down where this old boy said, when you read this book and you come to the words you don't understand, just say woodpile and keep going. Just don't stop. It don't make any difference what it is. We'll all be listening to you. We're all on your side. Man, that's great. Man, did he read good? That's good. So I told Charlie yesterday, I said, man, you read that's the best paragraph I ever heard. Man, that's good as I ever heard. I think we got to tell people that. You got to tell these people that, You did good. You're doing great. Great books deal with the problems of human existence. Morals, spirituality, happiness, fear, self-esteem. That's what these great books deal with. You go over to Santa Fe State John College, their whole curriculum is based on great books. You don't have lectures on English, math, and government history. You got great books. You read so many great books each semester, and that's your education. And that's what we got. They can be read at many levels of understanding and have many interpretations. They change as we change. These books change as we change. He said like I said, you never step in the same stream twice. You never read the same book twice. Even these books, I got some books I reread every couple of years. It's different every year. And sometimes I understand them different, and I learn stuff each time I go through them because I'm changing. And that's what we do here. And that's kind of why when you do inventories, don't worry about the first inventory. Do your first inventory. Write something down, move on. Because it ain't going to be good in 5 years anyway. You're going to see some more stuff. You're going to put more stuff on it. So we ain't going to change. I'm not changing. We're not going to change. I'm not going to change books. You change what they want to. You remember last year we were talking about the pamphlet, the Members' Eye View pamphlet, that they're going to consider dropping that. I said, drop it they want to. We're not dropping it over at my house. I had 40 copies, and I bought 50 more copies. I got 90 copies, and the last one I'm going to put in a little baggie, keep it pristine, so when it's all gone, I go to Kinko's, and we'll have some more copies. And so the pamphlet, Members' Eye View, is not going away. It's not going to go anywhere. And same way with the big book. KC bought 100 big books the other day. They had a sale, the big old red replica, big book, the first edition reprint, big books. They're selling for $2.50. KC just bought 100 of them, just in case. We need them. And so you change whatever you want to. We got first edition, first edition, original program anyway. I'd as soon read that. First and second edition, we don't have any copyright on the first and second edition big books. But these controversies, when I came in 65, about 66, there was some discussion about listing special interest groups, businessmen's groups, airline pilots groups, whatever kind of groups it was. And and I was kind of concerned about that. I was kind of viewing with alarm for the good of the movement. There was kind of alarm that they're just taking place. Maybe somebody might be excluded. And, I told you, our lives hinge on these little snippets we hear from these people. And these little things that happen. One thing happened this weekend, you should remember the rest of your life. One guy you'll talk to, I go see this old man about what's going on in AA. I'm kind of concerned. And there's Harold Wilson. Harold he'd been at the top of Texas, railed up all week, and then he was tired. Matter of fact, I went to his room. He's in bed. He's laying there, but he had his book. I always had his book laying there by him. And I said, Harold, that man, they're doing all this kind of stuff, and yada yada. And he said the words which have resonated with me since that night, and which are imprinted in these guys over here. On a T-shirt we got. Harold picked up that book and he said, by God, they ain't going to get me. And man, that sunk in my soul. And I thought it when I left that room, and I think it today more than ever. By God, they ain't going to get me. I ain't going to do that. I've been here too long. Evidently this thing works. Whatever we done, whatever that old man told me, it works. And this old man, when I asked him to be my sponsor, said, you build your sobriety on this book. Don't build your sobriety on me. Because he said, I'm going to be gone. He had emphysema. He was already old. He was 59. You believe anybody that old? I got kids older than 59, But I thought, man, this old dude, really. And he said, don't build your sobriety on that group. That group's going to be gone. A few years ago, I took the guys on a Willard reality tour down Odessa. We drove by Scotty's house, and we drove over to where the cottage group used to be, and it's a parking lot at Odessa High School. And we stood in the parking lot, like we did here this morning, in a circle, about 15 of us, and said the prayer. I don't know what those school kids thought about that, but we said the prayer where the cottage group used to be. We said a few words over that, And then I took them to all these other places that meant so much to me. And I told you this. I used to go see Hal Looney. Hal was out there. I'd go get Hal. And every time I saw Hal, he'd say, you won't go out to the cemetery. I'd say, all right, we'll go. And his first wife's buried out there in the Odessa cemetery. Matter of fact, she's about, if you've ever been out there, she's about, is that your sponsors buried there by Hal? By Sarah? What's his name, Jerry Sullivan? There's a tombstone that says Jerry Sullivan. I don't know if it's him or not. There's a big set of praying hands, and Hal's wife there. We'd go up, see Hal's wife, see Sarah, say a few words. Then we'd walk down the other end of the cemetery. My mother's down there. We'd look around, find a little tombstone, and go over and say a few words where my mother was. Then we'd walk across the street, and we'd find the old sponsors' grave, Scotty and Dodie, and they were my sponsors. When you got Scotty, you got Dodie. You didn't even have to ask. You just got that. That's who your sponsor. They said, "Who's your sponsor?" Well, it's Scotty and Dodie, and Scotty and Dodie's there. And Hal, this old man, Hal, 90-something years old then, and he'd stand on that tombstone. We'd hold hands. He'd say, "Thank God for Scotty and Dodie. Thank God for these people. You know, thank God." And I said, "Don't you know that old man would be proud? Don't you think he'd be proud of us? Here we are, 50 years or more sober from what wrought from him and through this program, Alcoholics Anonymous. And that ain't false pride, you know. You can take some pleasure and pride in what he did and what he carried on. That's our legacy. That's our legacy we have to have. You know, how am I going to carry this thing on? You know, these people out here, we got to, you know, somebody said earlier too, you just got to love these people. Love is the answer. Love satisfies. If you read that first 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians, talks about love, you know. And love satisfies, you don't need 10 commandments if you got love. Love satisfies all 10 commandments. Because if you love enough, you don't murder. If you love enough, you don't steal. If you love enough, you don't covet. Love is about, so how am I going to love these people? You know, and if you put all these other people in the right perspective, it's easy to love them. Y'all read the other day, it says, the seeker was asked the old Maharishi, the master, he said, "Master, how should we treat others?" And the old wise man said, "There are no others. There are no others. You are them. They are you. They're God. You're God. One God. Oh, we're all in this together. You know, we're all here. And we're not all in the same boat. We're all in the same storm. Some of us are in yachts. Some of us are in canoes. And some of us are drowning. So how are we going to go back and pick up these others? You know, that's what this is all about. You know, not taking a drink one day at a time, keeping this thing simple, and remember what I'm here for. Stay sober, help other alcoholics. Nowhere in this book does it say stay sober that doesn't almost follow by helping others. Stay sober and helping others. Stay sober. So, you know, you get sober, that's what you got to do. That's the full AA program. Getting sober and going home's nice, but you miss it, you know. And like I said, you get carried away by all this stuff you got, you know. Tom said, you know, the things when the things which you acquire in AA become more important than what you're doing today in AA, you're in trouble. And that's why this room's not packed double. Because people come here and it gets so good that they can't come back here anymore. They got to go take care of all that good stuff. You know, the old guy told me once, said the more stuff you got, the more stuff you got to worry about. You got to go take care of it. Now I got this stuff. And I hope I never get where I want to get so much stuff I get away from here. I've had many good things happen in my life that I just want more of this, you know. And that's a blessing. You know, that's a gift. If I've got a gift since I come here, it's not sobriety. The gift is not, a lot of people get sobriety. The gift is that I've always wanted to have this. I've always wanted to be here. I've always wanted to be with these guys. See? And it's, you know, and sitting in these circles and these things we do and these things, it is with these men that I've had the best days of my life. The best days of my life. But for coming here, I would have had no life. And now I get this. How can you get from there to here? How can you go from the south side of Odessa to sitting here in a group with these guys and they all love you and they all stand up and hold hands and pray with a bunch of guys? That's a long journey, but that's the power of this book. That's the power of this program, that you can take that journey. And I hope all of you can find that. You know, I hope you find that. You know, I think I'm just going to quit right there. I think that's pretty good. I love you guys more than I tell you.